We develop a scalable framework for the control of physically simulated characters performing a diverse set of behaviors. Here we see characters performing a variety of motions generated by our system. The input to our framework is a motion controller such as a motion graph or a phase function neural network. Using that motion controller, we generate a large library of reference motions and cluster them to put like motions together. An expert dynamic controller is learned for each cluster. Finally, the experts are combined to produce a general controller that can generate any motion derived from the input library. The simulated character is generated by the dynamic controller using a reference motion from a random walk in the motion graph. The bars on the right are the output values of the gate function of our combined controller, where the values are the degree of activation of each of the 8 experts. The reference motion starts with the character performing ballroom dance. The system can simulate longer sequences of motion than those used in learning the controller. Simultaneous and alternating activation of experts help the combined controller to generalize to unseen reference motions better than the single expert controller alone. The character now switches to a breakdance because of the presence of a transition from the standing node in the motion graph. The red arrows at the contact points on the ground indicate the magnitude and direction of contact forces. Here's a simulation of multiple behaviors demonstrating the diversity of motion that can be generated. All motions are generated by a single combined controller. We built a motion graph from the entire CMU motion capture database with 8 hours of data. The motion graph is used to generate 20 hours of motion clips for training. These motions are grouped into 8 clusters of like motions. We train an expert controller for each cluster. We show examples of simulated characters controlled by each of the 8 experts. This clip shows a comparison of the motion generated by a controller trained from scratch without experts to that generated by a controller using combinations of all pre-trained experts. There are many possible reward functions and ways to combine them. We compared adding a set of terms to multiplying them. In simple motions, the 2 reward functions perform similarly. In this dancing example, the feet slip on the ground when the additive reward is used. For complicated behaviors such as this breakdancing example, the additive reward failed to learn the motion. We found that the multiplicative reward sometimes perform better, especially for complicated behaviors where the additive reward failed to learn the behavior. We also compared strategies for terminating a failed motion in order to focus training time on successful motions. The motion on the left is learned with a manually designed termination strategy, which would have to be tweaked for each new behavior. The one on the right is learned with a strategy that terminates when the reward function falls too low for more than 1 second. We see similar results while obviating the need for behavior-dependent strategies. To show the generality of our approach, we built a system using one of the existing state-of-the-art kinematic controllers, a phase function neural network motion controller. 2 hours of reference motion were generated from the PFNN, and the motions were divided into 3 clusters representing standing, crouching, and a mix of walking and running. We learned a controller by combining the 3 experts. At runtime, we use joystick and button inputs to interactively control the character, thus generating reference motion. Our controller produces simulated motion for the character by following the reference motion. Blocks are thrown at the character to test robustness to external perturbations. When the perturbations are extreme, the character eventually falls down.